Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Coach Craig Sports. Today's episode, we're going to go over players to avoid or players that I'm not drafting this year. So, in the last episode, I asked you guys, and I asked on the fantasy football discussion group on Facebook, who are guys that you are avoiding this year, or pretty much like not drafting in general. So, from that group, the most common names that came up were Kenyon Drake, David Johnson, Melvin Gordon, DJ Moore, Le'Veon Bell, Mike Evans, Darius Geiss, Chris Carson, Rob Gronkowski, and Juju Smith-Schuster. So those were the most common names that came up. A lot of them seem to be those running backs that are kind of going in like the third or fourth round. David Johnson, Melvin Gordon, Le'Veon Bell, and Chris Carson. So that kind of group, that's kind of in the range that I'm not really trying to take a running back, or if I'm taking a running back, he's kind of going to be like my running back 3 or my flex spot pretty much. This year, I'm pretty much going into the draft trying to take 2 running backs in the first 2 rounds and then going from there. Kenyon Drake, I understand why people are kind of hit or miss on him. He's never carried the full workload before, and he did great last year in limited sample size, the Cardinals. So we'll have to see how he does this year. With Geiss in Washington, he's also on my list. He's somebody that I'm not targeting at all. Obviously, he's got the injury history, and he's been effective in a couple games, but he just can't stay healthy. And I think he's more likely to get cut than be the starter the whole year. So, in that group of running backs, I'm not really trying to target those guys, but I'm probably going after Le'Veon Bell, maybe Chris Carson, David Johnson. If I gotta pick somebody out of those 4 guys, Melvin Gordon's gonna be last on the list for me. Just being in Denver and having so many different options there, and having Philip Lindsay and breathing down his neck, I don't think he's gonna do much this year. His ceiling is just so limited. Chris Carson could have the workload. Obviously, he's got the injury concerns with his hip a little bit, but supposedly he's doing better. David Johnson in Houston, he should get a lot of run this year, and just depending on how they use him, he might not be that great for fantasy. Then Le'Veon Bell, the Jets, he's the main offensive weapon on the Jets pretty much, so he's gonna get touches. So out of that group, Le'Veon Bell is just the highest up for me, just because he's gonna get the most amount of touches. Then when we look at the receivers that they were kind of mentioning, DJ Moore, Mike Evans, and Juju Smith-Schuster. So a lot of people are low on Mike Evans. Obviously, Tom Brady signed with the Patriots, Tom Brady obviously signed with Tampa Bay. Tom Brady is not as good at throwing the deep ball anymore. He's been known to throw the slot receiver underneath, and Mike Evans is more of the big play receiver, and Godwin's kind of that slot receiver more so. Plus, they got the 3 tight ends there now with Gronkowski, O.J. Howard, and Cameron Brate. So the ball's going to kind of get moved around a little bit. Bringing in Shady McCoy also provides an option out of the backfield to catch the ball as well. Ronald Jones did flash some potential to catch the ball out of the backfield as well at the end of last year, and Vaughn supposedly is a decent pass catcher out of the backfield from his college days as well. Mike Evans might be a little volatile again, just kind of like how he was last year. Juju, I'm not saying I would avoid him, just kind of depending on where he gets drafted. I think he could be a value this year, especially with Big Ben coming back this year, and everybody's talking about, Juju's moving back more to the slot. So obviously he excelled in the slot in the past. I do like a lot of guys on this Pittsburgh offense to have bounce back years, or a breakout year, especially like Deontay Johnson. Juju could bounce back. James Conner might bounce back if he's healthy. And then they have Eric Ebron, the tight end. I kind of like him as a bounce back candidate as well. So a lot of it just kind of depends on Roethlisberger staying healthy. But if Roethlisberger and James Conner are both healthy, then you're going to have a pretty good year for them. The Fantasy Pros website up. We looked at I'm looking at ECR for half point PPR. Then the last guy that was on that list was DJ Moore. I don't know why, there were so many people on the Facebook group that were like, I'm not drafting DJ Moore this year. And I'm like, why? I asked a lot of people too. They think he's not going to be that good, or Bridgewater's not going to be that good. But if you look at last year, he had almost 1,200 yards receiving, and his quarterbacks were Kyle Allen and Will Grier. Teddy Bridgewater is obviously an upgrade over both them. Joe Brady comes in as the offensive coordinator, so I think they're going to move the ball a little bit better down the field as well. Their defense is still terrible, probably worse than it was last year, so they're going to be playing catch-up in a lot of games. So he's going to get a lot of targets. And I think he's probably a shoo-in for 1,200 yards. And last year I think that he had 4 touchdowns, so I think this year he'll probably get closer to 6. So if you get 1,200 yards, 6 touchdowns, he's going to be up there in that wide receiver 1 range pretty easily. So he's a guy, and where he's kind of getting drafted this year, I don't mind him at all. DJ Moore's ECR and half-point PPR, so ECR is expert consensus ranking is number 15. His ADP is number 13. For me, he's my wide receiver 11 this year, so I think he's kind of a guy that is a value. But But a lot of people are saying that they're going to avoid him this year, so you guys can make that call for yourselves. But for me, DJ Moore is more of a target than somebody I'm avoiding. Then Gronk. Gronk's the last one that a lot of people mention. I don't have too many feelings about him this year. I think he's a guy that he's either going to do a lot or he's not going to do anything. But like where you're drafting him, he's going late enough in drafts that if you want to take a chance on him, that's fine. So, but he's also a guy like, if you see the first 2 weeks of the year and he's not playing a lot or he's not getting a lot of targets, you can just cut him and then pick up another tight end. It's not the end of the world. Obviously, like you guys, I kind of talked about my tight end strategy. I kind of take flyer guy late. If he does well, keep him around. If not, just kind of switch him out. Keep streaming them throughout the year. I'm going to talk a little bit about my guys that I'm going to avoid. I guess I'll start with wide receivers since I'm already there. First one for me is Amari Cooper. ECR's got him going wide receiver number 9. And ADP, he's going number 8. Amari Cooper is probably the most inconsistent wide receiver in football. There's a lot of people who have done videos about him already, so I'm not gonna beat a dead horse with this. Amari Cooper, he's either gonna have a really good week for you, or he's not gonna do anything. And like a lot of people that had him last year, you're gonna understand that. But for where he's going, in this range where he's going way too high for that. Like he might be a wide receiver 1 by the end of the year. Like he might be a top 12 wide receiver at the end of the year, but like he's not gonna help your fantasy team. And that's not a guy we want on our team, especially like for where he's going. So if he's a boom bust guy, like we're better off drafting a different wide receiver later on. So later on we could draft somebody like Will Fuller, who's the same type of wide receiver and has the same type of upside if he's healthy. But instead of drafting Amari Cooper in the 3rd round, we can draft Will Fuller in like the 6th, 7th round. So we can save 4-round difference there and pretty much get the same player. Or if you really want to, I guess you could go like an AJ Green route, and it's the same type of thing. AJ Green's, he might be around before Will Fuller. Or you could go after Marvin Jones. Marvin Jones is the same boom bust type of guy. High touchdown dependency, doesn't always perform it week to week. But he's the exact same thing as Amari Cooper, and him and Will Fuller are both going around 6'7". Brandon Cooks down here is the same way. Why would you spend a 3rd round pick on Amari Cooper when you could spend a 6th or 7th round pick to pretty much get the same player? It's all about value. You're going to take that 3rd round pick. You're going to get your running back 3. You're going to get your real wide receiver 1. You're going to get somebody like that and make your team stronger. Don't waste your pick on Amari Cooper. For wide receiver, I don't have as many. I don't think wide receiver is too awful this year. The other couple guys that I think were going a little bit too high were John Brown for Buffalo. He's not going to get as many targets this year, especially with Stephon Diggs there. He's probably somebody I'm just avoiding straight up unless something would happen to Stephon Diggs, but then at that time somebody's probably already got him. I was looking here on my notes. I have him down as ECR 37. He's at number 38 now. He's going number 49 in ADP. I think he should be going about closer to his ADP, about wide receiver 50, wide receiver, something like that. But he's not a guy that you're going to want to start on a weekly basis. He might be a bye-week filler. But with Stephon Diggs there, he's not going to get the targets. He's not going to have the upside that he did last year. He's pretty much somebody I'm avoiding drafts. Emmanuel Sanders is another one. He signed with the Saints. Emmanuel Sanders is not a bad wide receiver by any means, but he's not going to get the volume this year. Obviously, they're going to feed Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara first. He's going to be competing for 3rd place with Jared Cook for targets. Right now, I think ECR's got him at 43, ADP's got him at 42. He should be like after 50. Like, you're never gonna play him in a week. Like, unless Michael Thomas gets hurt or Alvin Kamara gets hurt, he doesn't have real value. So just don't draft him. Just you have Jamison Crowder right next to him in ECR and a couple picks later in ADP. Take Jamison Crowder every day of the week, especially in half-point PPR, full-point PPR. He's going to be much more valuable. You can plug him in at your flex play. He's going to lead the Jets in catches and targets probably. He's going to be somebody that will help your team. So, and then even like before that, you got Desean Jackson kind of in that same range. He's another guy that could really help out your team as well. Anthony Miller here. If Nick Foles is the starter, I think Anthony Miller is a much better play than Emmanuel Sanders. Foles obviously likes throwing to the slot receiver. Miller did excel towards the end of last year as well. The last guy I got is Breshad Perriman. And he's down here at ECR 56. ADP's got him at 61 now, so he moved down a couple spots since I was first doing a little bit of my research. But Breshad Perriman, he had a good end of last year, but he's never done anything in his career. He's got terrible catch rate. He's going to the Jets. Adam Gase just kills wide receivers. Anybody that owned Robbie Anderson last year knows how inconsistent he was. He wasn't dependable. Breshad Perriman's he's going to be the exact same way this year. And he's just a worse version of Robbie Anderson, so just avoid him. If you're going in this range here, you might as well just draft Robbie Anderson, who's going around the same spot. He's in a better situation in Carolina. He'll probably get more targets. He could be the number 2 there. Desean Jackson, he's pretty much a flyer. You might as well have a better chance of hitting big with him as a flyer than you do with Breshad Perriman. Or even Allen Lazard down here. There's a lot better flyer guys that you can take a shot on down here. I'm going to go over to tight end now. So for tight end, the first guy I'm going to talk about is Evan Ingram. Do not draft Evan Ingram this year. He may be very talented. He can never stay healthy. He's coming off a foot injury already where he had surgery. I believe it was a Liz Frank injury. People that generally have that Liz Frank injury struggle during the season that they had. Obviously, like I said, he can't stay healthy to start with, so this isn't going to help anything. They got a lot of mouths to feed for the Giants this year. I just don't see it this year. Daniel Jones really never got chemistry with him, so it might not be as good a situation for him. But like looking at Evan Ingram overall, like he has a high upside if he could hit it, but the odds that he hit it and where you got to draft him aren't going to be worth it because like a lot of the times he's going in that 6th round, 7th. You know, those middle rounds for a tight end, those are usually the guys you're trying to avoid. Like if you really want a tight end that's good, just take one early. I don't believe in that method personally, but if you're going to do that, take a guy early that you know is going to be good, or take a guy late with the flyer. The middle round guys, they're such a coin flip. Every year they just kind of flop. So Evan Ingram's probably going to be one of them guys as well this year, especially while he's already injured. The other guy is Tyler Higby. Tyler Higby, they got him as tight end number 7 now. I think he actually just jumped up a spot recently. Even though his ADP is a little bit lower though, so he's going around tight end 11. I think for me, I got him around tight end 14. He's a guy. He showed a lot last year at the end of the year, and that's what people are going to remember. He had the best streak of 5 games for a tight end in tight end history. But he played against weak competition when he did that. You've got Gerald Everett coming back this year, who was doing halfway decent before he got hurt, and then Higby kind of took over again. They were kind of running more 2 tight end sets. That could help. Cooper Kupp's fully recovered from ACL now. Last year, obviously, he was coming off the ACL tear, and then he kind of wore down as the season went on. They still got Robert Woods. I don't think Higby's going to be worth where you got to draft him at this year. So the running backs that I'm kind of avoiding. So Nick Chubb's going to be the first one. ECR number 8. He's going ADP number 8. You're probably going to have to draft him at the end of round 1. If you get him in round 2, I ain't going to be too mad about it. But I think overall, He's going to split carries with Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt's going to get most of the passing work. So his role is just limited. Like, he's a top, like, I see him as like a top 15 running back, but I don't see like the top. He doesn't have the top 5 upside this year. And when you're drafting a running back in the first round, you're trying to find somebody that really has top 5 upside or real safe. And I think week to week, he might be safe, but I'd rather have him as like a running back number 2. Next guy is right below him is Josh Jacobs. He's kind of in the same role as Chubb. He's not going to get a lot of passing work this year. They brought back Jalen Richard. They drafted Lynn Bowden Jr. So his upside's limited. He struggled somewhat with injuries last year, and I think there's a lot of durability concerns there. You're seeing some of these guys are getting drafted after him, or a little bit later in ECR. Miles Sanders, Kenyon Drake, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I pretty much take all these guys over these 2 running backs. And obviously, I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire, as time goes on, you're going to see his ECR and his ADP move up. Obviously, with the news of Damian Williams opting out. Then we're going to go down a little ways. Melvin Gordon, I kind of already talked about. I think he's a little too high. They got him at ECR 18, ADP 18. I got him as like running back number 20, 21 now. I just don't think he's got that upside. Cam Akers is the next guy I'm going to talk about. He did drop back a little bit now in his ECR and ADP compared to a couple days ago when I was first doing a little bit of research for this. But he's the guy. The Rams are going to split the backfield. So you got Akers, Henderson, and Malcolm Brown. And maybe even John Kelly. McVay said he kind of wanted to rotate 3 or 4 guys. I don't think one guy's going to run away with it. Cam Akers, there's a lot of people out there that like him. Personally, I'm not a big fan. I have a connection to a coach, to one of his former coaches. He said that he doesn't think he's going to be very good in the NFL. In college, he fumbled a lot. He doesn't have very good hands. Like, he honestly was shocked that he was drafted as high as he was. So, like, he might have some talent, but, like, I think Henderson's probably just as good. So, I think they're just going to split the carries. When it comes down to it, McVay might even prefer Malcolm Brown since he knows the system. And they're comfortable with him, at least, especially, like, around the goal line, maybe pass protection situations, stuff like that. Darius Geiss, obviously, we already talked about him. He was another one that was on my list. And then for quarterback, I don't have a lot for quarterback right now, but the guy that I'm mainly avoiding is Daniel Jones. I think ECR had him about 15. Yeah, he's up to 14 now in ECR, and then ADP was at 16. So Daniel Jones obviously has upside. We've seen some of his games last year where he had the good upside, but their schedule is just so rough this year. Like, if you're drafting Daniel Jones, I don't know when you're going to play him. So, like, you really only want to draft him as like your quarterback 2, but like if you're in a single quarterback league, I don't know when you're gonna play him, honestly. So like unless you're in a league where your bench has got expanded a lot this year for Corona or for due to the virus, then maybe you take him. If you're in a super flex or a 2 QB league, I'd take him there. Is like a low-end quarterback 2, or if you get 2 good quarterbacks before him, and you can have him as your 3rd guy and just swap him in when he has a good matchup or when somebody's on a bye week. I guess that makes sense. Obviously, he's got a little bit of rushing upside, and then he had some big games last year as well. So these were kind of the guys that were the most common from the question that I asked of who people would avoid in their drafts this year. And then I kind of talked a little bit about the guys that I'm kind of avoiding or really not drafting this year as well. Overall, it's just a short list, nothing too crazy. Honestly, I don't usually go into a draft and say, let's use an example, like I'm never drafting Patrick Mahomes or I'm never drafting Lamar Jackson. There's a couple people that put Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson on their list when I asked the question. But, like, if you're in round 5 and you see Lamar Jackson out there, you're going to take him. Like, it's not like you're avoiding him at all cost. So that's kind of why I left those 2 guys. Left a couple people like that out, but it was only like a couple people that said them. But like, I'm never gonna go into a draft and be like, I'm not gonna draft this guy. even though I don't take quarterback early, even though I don't take tight end early. Well, if they fall, if they're there in round 4 or 5 and it's a value, I'm still going to take them. That's why you have to be able to adjust and adapt during your draft, because you never know what's going to happen. Unless you can read the mind of everybody in your league and know what they're going to do going into it, you're never going to know. Part of what's important to do is, especially you can go on Fantasy Pros, you can go on ECR, you can pick position here, pick scoring. So if you're going under wide receiver, so you can pick for your league here. So we're going to go wide receiver. We're going to go PPR. So this is a full point PPR. And then this is under the expert consensus rankings. So this is going to tell you the average, the average mean based on who ranks here. So Michael Thomas. So this is the ECR ranking. This is the ADP ranking over here. And this is the difference if there is one. So in this situation, it'll show you the best that an expert has them ranked and the worst. So Michael Thomas, most people have him ranked as wide receiver 1. The worst he's ranked is wide receiver number 3. You go down to Devontae Adams, number 1, number 5. Julio Jones, number 1, number 7. But then when you look here, expert consensus rankings has Julio Jones number 3. ADP, he's going wide receiver number 5 across the board. This is it shows the difference of 2, so experts are valuing him 2 higher. And then down here you have the opposite. DeAndre Hopkins, an ADP is going 3, and ECR is 5, so he's a -2. So there's just a little bit of a difference. Obviously, if you see down here, Kenny Galladay, experts like Kenny Galladay a lot better than ADP does. So maybe you're in your draft and Kenny Galladay starts falling a little bit. He's a guy you could target as a value. And then I don't know if there's. Let me see if there's one that's pretty big down here. Obviously, we talked about Anthony Miller. Experts like him a lot more. Deebo Samuel, his ADP is still pretty high. Obviously, that's probably from his injury. Experts moved him down, but ADP probably hasn't adjusted all the way yet. But so that one shows a -12. Like I said, though, this is just a little tool. You don't have to use it, but especially knowing ADP for your platform. So if you're playing on ESPN or Yahoo or Sleeper, just going into it and kind of knowing the ADP of in general where people get drafted, that will help you. And then going into your draft, you can look at different people's rankings, whether they're an expert, whether you're making your own, whether it's mine that I'll be sharing later. It's just good to know, comparing your rankings with the ADP of what's going on, especially on your platform. So, that's pretty much all I got for this episode. If you guys liked and enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already, check out that little subscribe button down below. And if you're a new subscriber, or if you haven't already yet, or you're a new subscriber, hit the notification bell. It'll let you know every time we post up a video. The next one will be over some breakout players for this year. I asked the question in the fantasy football discussion group on Facebook again. If you guys haven't joined that, I'll leave the link down below. I'll leave the link down below to Coach Craig Sports Facebook page as well. So the next question that I'm going to be answering is who are your breakout players for the year? So I'll talk a little bit about my players that I like to break out this year. I'll talk about a couple of the players people mentioned in that group. And then if you guys have any breakout players that you'd like, to mention as well, leave it down in the comments below. With that being said, that's all we got for today. Hope you guys enjoyed this video and have a great rest of your day.